Thessaloniki, between the region of Central Macedonia and Cern, and this is great. I would like to express my thanks also to Emmanuel, to Mr. Tesmelis. He's great in doing this collaboration, also to Mr. Ziogas. Nikos, thank you very much. And I think that the role of Mr. Unevik for the next years will be very crucial. I mean, for having more suppliers from Greece. Our goal, I'd like to say that we have organized all these years as a BIC in Thessaloniki, not only in Thessaloniki, but all over Greece, more than 20 dissemination events for the Cern technologies. And this is very important for building this relation between Cern and Thessaloniki and Central Macedonia. Our goal, as our governor has expressed, is to transform this BIC in Thessaloniki in a national BIC, with having the center in Thessaloniki, perhaps in collaboration with other organizations in Athens, in Patra, or in Irakli or in Crete. You decide about that. But our special goal is to transform Thessaloniki BIC in a national organization, in a national BIC. And we think that we have the personal support of our government. And this is very important for having a more useful collaboration between Thessaloniki, between Technopolis, between Central Macedonia and Cern. Thank you very much. One more time. Θα συνεχίσω να πω δύο κουβέντες στα ελληνικά. I know that it's all Greek to you, but I have to speak in Greek a little bit. Θέλω να πω ότι είναι πάρα πολύ σημαντικό αυτό που γίνεται σήμερα. Είμαστε τυχεροί και το εννοώ αυτό, γιατί ο Απόστολος ο Κωστής είναι ένας νέος άνθρωπος που πιστεύει στις νέες τεχνολογίες. Εγώ είμαι στις νέες τεχνολογίες παλιός. Και δίνουμε έναν αγώνα για εταιρείες τεχνολογίας εδώ και 30 χρόνια. Δεν έχουμε καταφέρει να πείσουμε τους πολιτικούς ότι οι νέες τεχνολογίες μπορούν να γίνουν μια στρατηγική βιομηχανία για τη χώρα. Ο Απόστολος Τζίκας το πιστεύει και πρέπει να το εκμεταλλευτούμε αυτό. Και θέλω να πω το εξής. Είμαστε σήμερα εδώ γιατί οι προμήθειες ελληνικών επιχειρήσεων στο Cern είναι πολύ χαμηλά. Νομίζω πρέπει να επιμείνουμε σε αυτό και η περιφέρεια, ο Περιφερειάρχης το είπε, θα επιμείνει και εμείς θα είμαστε δίπλα του. Πρέπει σήμερα ξεκινάμε, μάλλον ξεκινήσαμε πριν 2 χρόνια, αλλά πρέπει να επιμείνουμε, θέλει πολλή δουλειά. Η Ελλάδα είναι εδώ και 40 χρόνια περίπου που δεν συμμετέχει με τα ποσοστά που τις αρμόζουν στις προμήθειες και έχουμε εταιρείες ικανές να το κάνουμε. Άρα σήμερα ξεκινάμε και πρέπει να διευρύνουμε αυτό το δίκτυο των επιχειρήσεων, να ερχόμαστε τακτικά, να δικτυωνόμαστε, αυτό θα κάνουμε αύριο, θα δικτυωθούμε με στελέχη του Cern, γιατί έτσι γίνεται. Είναι σύνδερα τα πράγματα, βεβαίως υπάρχει αξιολόγηση, αλλά υπάρχουν και οι δικτυώσεις οι προσωπικές. Αυτό θα κάνουμε αύριο και βέβαια θα το συνεχίσουμε. Εμείς σαν Τεχνόπολη το ξεκινήσαμε αυτό πριν από 4 χρόνια. Υπογράψαμε αυτό το μνημόνιο συνεργασίας, μετά ήρθε το αγκάλιασε και μπήκε ομπρέλα η Περιφέρεια Κεντρικής Μακεδονίας. Νομίζω, το είπε και ο Περιφερειάρχης, θα το συνεχίσει, εμείς θα είμαστε δίπλα του και νομίζω ότι κάτι θα καταφέρει. Εμείς στο BIC ήδη φιλοξενούμε μια εταιρεία. Δεν είναι εύκολο να προωθήσει τις τεχνολογίες του Cern σε μια κοινωνία και μια οικονομία που δεν γνωρίζει τις τεχνολογίες του Cern. Θεωρεί ότι το Cern είναι κάτι πολύ ακαδημαϊκό, πολύ ερευνητικό και νομίζω και στη δική μας δουλειά θέλει πολύ επιμονή για να διαχειριστούν οι τεχνολογίες του Cern. Εμείς δηλώνουμε ότι σαν Τεχνόπολη θα είμαστε δίπλα σε αυτή την προσπάθεια. Θέλω να ευχαριστήσω όλους τους ανθρώπους του Cern, αλλά ειδικά τον Μανώλη του Δεσμελή, Έχει κάνει μια καταπληκτική δουλειά για να φέρει σε επαφή την Ελλάδα με το Cern και τον ευχαριστώ για μια ακόμη φορά.
Εγώ ευχαριστώ πολύ. Ευχαριστώ. Thank you very much, Mr. Dzika. It's always a pleasure working with you and Technopolis. So I think now we can move on to the presentations from Anders on the procurement.
The procurement service for you. I will talk a little bit about what we buy, how we buy, give you some ideas about how to treat specifications, call for tenders, how to be successful suppliers at Cern, and some statistics. First of all, background. Legal framework. We are... okay, is it better? Good. We are an international organization, so we have our own rules how we do procurement. We do not follow European public procurement rules, although the differences are not major. There are some differences which you will see in a few minutes. We also have our own safety rules and rules for how we treat the personnel at Cern. Some numbers you have seen, Emmanuel showed these already. We have 22 member states. That's not entirely true, but it's an abbreviation. We have 22 member states plus 8 associated member states. Some associated member states will become member states later, and some will stay associate member states. Approximately 2,500 staff members, about 2,000 people working on the Cern site as contractors, personnel on service contracts. And we have some 13,000 what we call users, the people doing the physics research at Cern. They are not here at the same time, everybody, but in total, we used to say we are 10,000, 11,000 people working on the Cern site, a small village. A budget 1.15 billion Swiss franc, which is about 1,000 million euro today, approximately. And here you see the budget as it is constituted of the contributions from the member states, where each country pays depending on the national net product, Germany being the biggest contributor, and then there's a number of, let me see here, on 1 million, which is the minimum fee basically for associate member states. It totals up to 1.15 billion Swiss franc. And indeed, here we have Greece on a little bit more than 1%, 12 million Swiss franc. Now, this compared to our expenditure. So we have a budget about 1.15 billion Swiss franc, and I put a green line, what I call the long-term average expenditure profile. We spend about 500 million Swiss franc per year. So a little bit less than half of the budget. The rest, of course, is for personnel, etc. The 500 million is split up in different items. Directly for the experiments, where some money comes in addition to the budget from the experiments themselves. Industrial services, these are the about 2,000 people working on the Cern site on service contract, being it cleaning contracts or people in the mechanical workshops or anything like that. We have also what we call the supply, that's the normal goods and supplies, which splits up here because in 2017 we extracted what we call utilities, which are goods which we have to buy for various legal reasons in the local area, France and Switzerland. Energy, for example, we can't buy it from water, cooling water we get from the Lake of Geneva. And the total expenditure is then the blue line. So this was 2017. 2018, I don't have the final numbers yet, but it will go up, primarily thanks to or due to the high luminosity LHC contracts we are placing. So that's where we are. Yeah, you can see this peak, of course, was during the LHC construction, where we had a number of big contracts, but we placed the contract within the built LHC within the annual standard budget, meant that we took up loans. That was approved by council, it was planned for. We took up loans which we paid back later in this period. We still have a small deficit, but there's no big problem, no loans. The pure supply part of the budget, 253 million approximately, just to show you a snapshot, part of it, information technology, civil engineering, electrical engineering, electronics, vacuum, etc., etc. You will see it's quite diverse spread of how we spend the money. There is not one field which is vastly bigger than any other. Of course, this varies from year to year a little bit. What do we buy? Well, we have about 700 buildings on the Cern site. We have 3 restaurants, we have our own fire brigade, we have 2 bank offices, we have our own kindergarten. It's a small village. So a lot of what we buy is not related to high energy physics in any way. Construction, building work, road works, metallic structure. We have some industrial equipment, but not necessarily related to high energy physics, like cooling, ventilation, cables, mechanical, transport, security, access control, etc. And we have some computer equipment. We have our own big computer center. A lot of standard equipment. And then, of course, we buy equipment to buy the accelerators, and part of the equipment also for the detectors, the experiments. Power converters, control system, magnets, wall magnets, superconducting magnets, beam equipment, collimation injection, etc. Cryonics, vacuum, radio frequency, you name it. We buy, of course, now primarily a big chunk for the high luminosity project. There's another project which goes towards it finishing off now. It's the injectors upgrade. And we are starting spending on the studies and development work for CLIC and for FCC. What can I say? How do we buy? Well, we buy part of it, as you will see, is standard equipment. We're buying a computer. We will certainly just make a functional specification, a performance specification. We're not going to do a detailed specification for that. We buy equipment which can be built with known technologies, but where companies may have to improve a little bit what they have just to meet our requirements. No big deal. We still use functional specification. But then we buy also equipment where companies do not have the expertise, know-how, or not even perhaps an interest in developing for us, because there is no real market outside Cern. Some of the superconducting magnets is a typical example, where for us it's core technology. We need to know, master the technology for these magnets, while industry outside Cern, there is not really a market for these kind of accelerator magnets. There we do the development ourselves, in-house, together with collaborating institutes in the member states. And once we have a working solution, we give it as built to print to industry, and we tell the industry, you build this according to this specification, with these components, these material, following these procedures, and we guarantee that it will work. So, and we cover everything from the most standard up to this extreme built to print specification. Where are we? And everything we buy is handled by the procurement service together with our technical colleagues. Means anything from pencils from the stores up to the superconducting magnets, the cryogenic equipment. We follow standard objective procedures, of course. We try to buy what we should as cheap as possible, making sure that it meets all our requirements. But we also have to try to achieve a well-balanced industrial return in the member states. I'll come back to that in a moment. These two, of course, are not always too easy to combine, buy cheap and achieve industrial return. The standard word we use in our rules, nothing particular. I think any big organization would say the same. We follow transparency, impartiality. We are objective and equal treatment from the companies. However, this is a little bit particular. We try to buy everything we can from the member states and associated member states. Means basically that we are publishing our requirements, but companies cannot submit a bid unless they've been invited by Cern. So that is one of the difference compared to the public procurement rules, where anybody can submit a bid. Basically, at Cern, that's not the case. Any company has to be invited by Cern to have its bid considered. Our openings, evaluation, all that are confidential and not public, of course. Now, we have two principles for award contracts. For supplies and equipment, it's basically the lowest bidder meeting our requirements. And for services, we use best value for money. That is, we take prices, of course, into account, but also quality aspect. Proposal by the service provider, maybe a turnover of personnel, how they organize their work on the Cern site, etc., etc. However, price is never less than 50% of the overall weighting in the balance on this. What can I say more? We have on the call for tender side, we can distinguish between different thresholds. Of course, the process is more cumbersome, complex, the more expensive the requirement is. Below 10,000, anybody can at Cern basically request a couple of offers, provided certain basic rules are followed. Between 10,000 and 200,000 Swiss francs, normally it's the procurement service issuing a price inquiry, and above 200,000, we have a procedure where we issue first a market survey, which is in fact a pre-qualification stage, and then the invitation to tender. And even before the market survey, we announce on our webpage what the requirements will be. And it's available for anybody to see now. For price inquiries, we normally give around 4 weeks for companies to answer. And if it's more than 50,000, we send it also to the country representatives, the industrial liaison officers, who can propose to add companies. And it's of course a specification, a tender form to fill in prices and the general condition, nothing particular. If it's above 200,000, I say we announce it on our webpage. I will show you a little bit of that later. All requirements. We have at any one time, I think about 50 to 60 requirements announced on our webpage, which covers the next 6 months or something like that, 6 months to 12 months. And companies can read it and propose if they see something which is interesting. You just send us an email and say, please contact me for this, and you will be contacted in due time. Not necessarily for the invitation to tender, but for the pre-qualification stage. Again, it's about 4 weeks minimum answer to bid for invitation to tender. It may be longer if it's more complex. The same type of documents, and of course there's a procedure. If you have questions during the process, you just send us an email or ask Cern, you write this in the specification, what do you mean, blah, 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 and we will reply to all that. Everything should be crystal clear. We will not only reply to you, we will reply to everybody. So they will see the question anonymously and the answer, so that everybody has the same information. And we have an e-tendering platform which we use to issue the invitation to tender, and also where bids have to be uploaded on. There's no paper, basically. Now, I mentioned early on industrial return and fair industrial return to the member states. So we need to keep track on where we buy things. For us, that means for what we call supplies, where the goods are manufactured. If I buy, I say, a computer manufactured by Dell, Dell is an American company, the components all come from China or Taiwan, but they have an assembly line in Poland. I may buy it via Dell in Switzerland, but if the computer is assembled in Poland, the country of origin for that computer will be Poland. That's how we count it. And that's about the same system as the European Union uses. We may have more than one country of origin if there's a big part of the assembly from one country and another part of the assembly from another country. It may be two countries of origin, 40% from that country, 60% from that country, etc. Services, the country of origin is where the bidder is established. We have defined our countries to be well balanced or poorly balanced, depending on the industrial return. If they have received I'll come back to that, a fair share of contracts, then they're called well balanced. If not, they're poorly balanced. And there's certain particular rules. I will talk about that. That's the alignment rule. So when we get the offers in, we will say, okay, this is from poorly balanced, this is from well balanced. If the lowest bidder is from a poorly balanced member state, no problem, we'll negotiate a contract with them. If the lowest bidder is from a well balanced and it's for prices above 100,000 Swiss francs, we will not immediately give them a contract. We will look at the lowest bidder from poorly balanced member state. Provided they are not more than 20% more expensive, we'll tell them, okay, you're not the cheapest, but you're from the poorly balanced. If you go down to the same price as the overall lowest, well-balanced member state, you get the contract. There's no negotiation, it's yes or no. You get a couple of days to answer, and that's it. That's the alignment rule. How do we calculate industrial return? Well, you may remember I showed you the contributions. 1.09% came from Greece. That's to our budget. If what I spend on supply contract, if I spend 1.09% of the 253 million or whatever in supplies we had in 2017, if 1.09% had been spent in Greece, I would have had here 1.09 above 1.09, and the coefficient would have been 1. And that is it. If it's 1, then it's well balanced. If it's below, it's poorly balanced. So well balanced 1, and we have poorly balanced below, and we call very poorly balanced if it's below 0.40. And it's over a 3-year period, so we don't have one contract should not have a big impact on it. Where do we stand now in the member state? Well, here's a list of well balanced, poorly balanced, where you will see Greece, and then very poorly balanced. And for Greece, I haven't, nothing particular for Central Macedonia, I have Greece. And this is the situation. So for supplies, it's not looking too bad. In fact, it was quite bad, but it's looking more positive. These numbers are still preliminary. We haven't done the book closing yet. Some of the amount here, which is booked for 2018, Greece, some of these contracts will probably move over the commitments into 2019. Deliverables may be later and so on. So this will probably go down a little bit, but it's still, I expect still an increase in 2018. Not too bad. Some of the companies, suppliers in Greece for 2018, without going into detail what they deliver or whatever, but Rentron doing racks, etc., Electromech doing Alex molding equipment. There are some mechanical workshop, electronics, etc., etc. We have a website which you are encouraged to go and have a look at. Procurement at Cern Web, which gives a lot of information, doing business, procurement process, etc. There's some small animated film about the rules you can find on it. You find the procurement process depending on threshold of money, how the flow chart, how it works, basically. If you're interested in knowing more about specific items, what's the guarantee conditions at Cern, bank guarantees, intellectual property conditions apply. You can click on different symbols here, it's available, and you get text explanations and so on. This is more for people, contractors working on the Cern site, but it's also information about that. And here is what I call the shopping list, the information you also find on our website about the future requirements. This is just a snapshot. You have 4 lines here, but typically you will have on that list 50 to 60 lines, where everything is expected to cost more than 200,000. And there's a small description, you get more information, read more here. You see who the technical contacts are, if you want to talk with them about it, or the procurement officer. If there's something here interests you, you can just click on an email here, procurement service, and you say, it opens an email to us, and it says you are interested in this requirement, and once we start the procurement process, you will be contacted automatically.